Testing one, two. There we go. There we go. Good evening, everyone. This is a very special time for me, even though it's been a long day. We have our awards for our first awards dinner, R.I.S.E Awards dinner. And I want you all to give these fine men. We have one young lady who's not here, and we're going to show a video of her in just a second. She did send us a video thanking us for the award that we gave to her, but I first want you to give them a round of applause again. They each with the letter R.I.S E. You want to show Kay James? Kay James video.
To the entire Freedom's Journal family, I hope that you're having an extraordinary conference. Since Eric and Jennifer put it on, I'm confident that you are. I only wish that I could be there with you. Probably the only job I've ever failed in my life is at retirement. I truly meant when I left the Heritage Foundation that I was going to be somewhere on a beach sipping drinks with Charles, but Governor Youngkin called and I answered that call. I have never worked harder in my entire life. I really do regret the fact that I can't be there with you, but there's so much going on in the state right now. And the award, you know, I don't know how to find the words to tell you how much this means to me, especially the part about influencing the future of the next generation of leaders and for the work as a wife, a mother. Those are the things that matter most to me at this stage in life. Being Charles's wife, being the mother of 3 of the most fantastic kids, and having 5 grandchildren that I absolutely adore. And so I'm looking forward to continuing that work as well as the work that I'm doing here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Governor Youngkin is an incredible leader, and he was well worth coming out of retirement for. So again, thank you for the recognition. I wish I could be there with you, but if I could turn this camera around and you could see the papers that are on my desk right now, you would really understand. But thank you again, and have a great conference.
When we started thinking about the R.I.S.E Awards dinner, you know, you've seen the movie, those of you, or the videos that we did on R.I.S.E for responsible government, individual liberty and fidelity, strong family values, and economic empowerment. And we started thinking who represents those, if we were going to do the first one. And of course, Kay was S for strong family values, because under that, not only is the family, but also education is under that. And I know she's done a lot with the Gloucester Institute in training some of our next leaders. And so we said, you know, it'd be great to have Kay, and we've had a chance to work with her on a number of other things. I see now you're fixing the time, so so I get extra time too, just like everybody else. So and so then we thought about, you know, who would represent. Oh, wait a minute, they're out of order. Kim was supposed to be here, but that's okay. We're not going to make you play musical chairs. So R for R.I.S.E was for responsible government. And the only person up here who's actually run for political office and actually won, that I know of, that I'm aware of, was Ken Blackwell. He's been the mayor of Cincinnati. He's been the treasurer of Ohio, secretary of state. He ran for governor, right? And is that it as far as elective office? I mean, he serves a number of other positions, and his bio, in fact, all these guys' bios are so long. I'm not even going to attempt to read them, though I was thinking about it because it's on the WOVA app, but my phone is almost getting ready to die. So I thought that wouldn't be a good thing to start one person's and not be able to finish the others. I was individual liberty and fidelity, and Dr. Shebly Steele talks about agency in a lot of his books, dream deferred, white guilt, shame. I'm sure I'm missing one or two of them. And I've read at least three of them the ones I just named. And so he represents that, and we're going to allow each one to speak to their areas. And of course, economic empowerment, of course, with Bob Woodson. So it made sense that these would be and I'm sorry, it looks like it's just all males, but we did try to get Kay here. And I've been very sensitive about trying to have more women involved in what we were doing. But I want you all to take pictures, first of all. If you have a camera, you can take a picture of them sitting down when they're standing up again and we're giving them their awards. Because this, to me, is historic. These three men and Kay have affected my life and why I do what I do. And a couple of them I know through other family members. Bob Woodson used to work with my mother at the Urban League. Yes. Ken Blackwell knew my stepfather, who ran for Senate in Virginia, Maurice Dawkins. The only one who I don't have a family connection with was Shebly Steele, Dr. Steele. How did he get it?
That's my cousin. That's my cousin.
So I want them, they're here to share some wisdom. They're not going to give speeches, but they do have some wisdom to share with us in their area of expertise and outside of it. I mean, sometimes we dabble outside of that. Some of these guys are so well-rounded and have so much information that even if we spend, 5-10 minutes each talking about something, I'm not going to ask you to, talk directly just for 10 minutes. But part of our topic was how to fix Black America with Black struck out, meaning basically how do we fix America? And so I wanted to, especially in your area of expertise, to talk about that, give us some highlights, some information of how you see the problem with America and how we can fix it. Because you guys have been involved in this stuff for decades, right? And I feel like, I'm sorry?
Not that many.
I feel like I'm the novice up here because I've only been doing it for, I don't even remember, for maybe 20 years. I think when I turned 40, I started getting involved in this. So you can, whoever wants to start, well, maybe we start with responsible government since.
We've heard from a variety of speakers today about the fact that for over 200 and almost 250 years now, this has been an American experience in self-governance. And the second paragraph in the Declaration of Independence sort of summed it up. We hold these truths to be self-evident, which my dad used to say was the highfalutin way of saying any knucklehead should be able to get this. That we are all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, unalienable rights. Well, that always meant that our fundamental rights are not grants from government, but gifts from God. And that we all are, God has invested in each of us human agency. And we, in fact, through the exercise of that human agency, can actually change the arc of history. And that it starts with understanding that the human condition is not a spectator sport. You can't retreat to the sidelines. You have to be involved. And the foundation of our system is that citizens, not subjects, are what our population is. And so citizenship, duties and responsibilities, and engagement actually is the foundation of good governance. When we, in fact, retreat to the sidelines and we surrender the direction of this country to a handful of folks who are engaged, we are saddled with the responsibility of the arc of history going in a crazy direction. And so I've always, from early childhood, been instructed, encouraged to be engaged. And that's what I've tried to do throughout my career in governance. But one of the things I know from working with both of these fellows up here is that it is so easy to fall into the trap of being a permanent politician, where in fact you lose contact with the people whose lives you're trying to encourage, or you begin to act as if you are a prescriber of what is good for everybody based on your understanding. And whether it is Shelby in the academy or Bob in the academy or on the street, and Bob and I always talk about being comfortable in the suites and on the street, understanding that there is a dynamic tension between theory and action, and that when it's in perfect harmony, you in fact can theorize in the classroom, but you put those theories in the action, and you find out where they're weak, where they're strong, and you come back and you refine it, and it's that cycle of praxis that actually can move history. So I got started when I was in my early 20s. I ran for the school board, lost by 500 votes, and then I was recruited to get into municipal politics by Charlie Taft, the son of William Howard Taft. And there was a Reform Party in Cincinnati. It was a municipal party made up of National Democrats and Republicans, but it was known as the Good Governance Party, and they recruited me. And one of the ways that Charlie thought I could differentiate myself was that I could be a leader, because there were no blacks on city council at the time, and the city was about 30% black, that I could be a leader for a heterogeneous community. And so what he thought he would do is to send me to a leader for some tutelage who was a leader of a heterogeneous city, Teddy Kollek, the mayor of Jerusalem. And so I went to Jerusalem and studied under Teddy for a little bit, and came back and won my first election to city council by 500 votes. And later became mayor of the city, and my claim to fame there was that I was mayor of the city after Jerry Springer. So my punchline was that only goes to prove that sometimes the sublime follows the ridiculous. But again, we wanted to change people's lives, but do it in a way that empowered them to be agents of their own upliftment, because Frederick Douglass said it best: you must come up with prescriptions and strategies that allow people to be participants in their own upliftment. And that's what both of these guys have meant to me as I've studied their work and if I worked in coalition with them. And I find that governance in this country is best when people are fully participant in the process, and that starts with free and fair elections. And that means that you can't be on the sidelines.
He's actually chairman of the Americans for, I forgot it now.
America First America First Policy Institute. The Center
Chairman
for
of Election Integrity, right? Bob?
I'd like to take on one point that Ken referenced about Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, in his writing, said that the worst time on a plantation was Christmas, because for 6 days the plantation owners gave the slaves off. But the plantation owners wanted the slaves to define freedom by self-indulgence. So he provided free rum and encouraged them to drink. In fact, they used to have competitions which plantation owner's slave could drink more than the other. And many succumbed to this, and because Frederick Douglass said at the end of the 6 days they'll be so sick that they would rather surrender to the control of a slave master than to surrender to Rome. And some slaves, but he said there was other slaves who, when confronted with that reality, chose to use that time instead of indulging in usurpation to visit family members. Others use that time to work so that they can earn money to purchase their freedom. And others use that time to learn to read. It all has to do with your choice, regardless of the external circumstance. And the other principle that operates in our people that served us well is the quality of debate within our group as to what would be the course forward. Nothing served us better than the quality of debate. It started at the turn of the century, even before, of the recolonizationists, Marcus Garvey. You had the insurrectionist, Nat Turner. And then you had the accommodationist, Booker T. Washington. Those are three strands, all armed with the same goal, is to free our people, but different strategies to apply it. And then later in the 60s, that debate, quality debate, continued between Malcolm X, Dr. King, the Republic of New Africa, remember, to set up a separate nation. And then you had the Black Panther Party. In fact, we had our own Tea Party split with King when the students at Greensboro decided they wanted to sit in and engage in civil disobedience. King was sent by Thurgood Marshall and the others to corral the students and discourage them from engaging in civil disobedience. But our young people were unhappy with the pace of change and said to King, either lead, follow, or get out of the way. And King was smart enough to know he must lead. And when King went to Montgomery, he was not welcomed by the leadership, the preachers or the civil rights leaders, because, again, with Rosa Parks. And so, but it was the students who came to King's defense and rallied the people. So I think that's what's missing today is the same quality of debate and leadership. Unfortunately, as a young civil rights activist in the 60s, I split over the issue of forced busing for integration. I believe that we should have argued separate is not inherently unequal, but strategically unequal. The opposite of segregation was desegregation, not integration. I had a chance to argue this on Meet the Press with Jesse Jackson and Johnny Cochran. And I said, because if you believe in separate is inherently unequal, anything is all black is all bad. I remember arguing this with the head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, whose name escapes me. But we were arguing at the New York Bar Association. He's a Harvard-trained lawyer. And I said, we have two circumstances. Circumstance A, where there's a school that's all black and it's a presence of excellence, and school B is integrated where there's diminished excellence. Where should we send our children? He said, to school B. And I said, there's no debate. And so so I believe that this quality of debate should continue today. And to me, it's around class, that many of the people who suffered and sacrificed for civil rights did not benefit from the change. When the doors were open, middle-class people who were well-educated walked through. They took the $22 trillion that the poverty programs aimed out. 70 cents of every dollar went not to the poor, but those who served the poor. They asked which programs are fundable, not which problems are solvable. So we created a commodity out of poor people, where the ones and the civil rights leaders became political politicians and moved in to run these cities. And so there's a huge class division right now. And I really believe, as God said, that as you do it unto the least of these, we should do it unto me. And what we have today that we are confronting is racism. The whole cry of racism is masking this fraud that is going on. The worst enemy the low-income blacks have isn't white bigots, it's black traitors. Black traitors. People like Kwame Kilpatrick, the mayor of Detroit, whose 42 members went to jail for stealing money from workers' pension funds. They live on a fraction of what they But there's no outcry. There's no outcry. When we concentrate exclusively on race-specific issues, when the perpetrator of evil wears a black face, it goes undetected and unaddressed. Geraldo Rivero did a 2-hour special on the sexual rape of women in prisons. Every one of the perpetrators was black. Every one of the victims was black. It never generated one conversation or public debate because evil has to wear a white face before we address it. And so the challenge that we have today is understand that America's problem is a moral and spiritual freefall that is consuming our children of all races and classes. The leading cause of death on teenagers in Silicon Valley is suicide. The leading cause of death of urban kids is homicide, and Appalachian moms lose their children to prescription drugs. But we'll never confront this moral and spiritual freefall, the emptiness that exists in the hearts of our young people, so that they devalue life. If life is devalued, you'll take your own or you'll take someone else's. That's the biggest problem. But in order for us to find out what is the answer to the emptiness that is in the lives of our children, we must push aside race and instead come together as Americans to rescue our young people. And the only way we're going to do that is for the full embrace of the values of pietas, love of country, love of God, and love of neighbor.
That's excellent. I told you we would sit here at these gentlemen's feet and learn a lot just in a few minutes that you spoke, both you and the Honorable Ken Blackwell. Dr. Steele, I know you've written...
You dump it on me.
Yeah, I know, after all of that.
I got to follow all that. I'm ready to go
But I know
home.
you've written a couple of books, one on white guilt, another one on shame, and you talk about personal agency.
Mm-hmm.
How is that hurting the black community, and what can we do about it?
Okay, well, I'll give my little shot at it. I think the most important event in black history in the 20th century was the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which made discrimination by race illegal, against the law. I think that at that moment, America, and black America particularly, we had been struggling by this time for almost 4 centuries, fighting for freedom, protesting for freedom, so forth and so on, for freedom. We had it. We got it. We won. 1964, Civil Rights Act. I think it was a date in October. But we were absolutely, at that point, free. The law was behind us. I was a graduate student just after that. They ran into discrimination in renting an apartment and went to court and won. And the judge was all hooray, hooray, and fined the man the highest amount he could possibly fine him. So it made that point that we are free. I think that the biggest challenge that black America has almost ever had is grappling not with racism, but with freedom.
That's right.
It is a huge, difficult, complex. It requires a whole different kind of man, a woman, a personality, of self-focus, self-possession, and the never relinquishing agency, never relinquishing the responsibility over oneself, over one's life. This is the challenge we have. Oh. Okay, thank you. This is the challenge that we have. Because freedom makes you scares the hell out of you. Makes you, oh my God, You mean I'm actually responsible? I have an ambition, and I want to do something, and I'm responsible for making that happen. And if it doesn't happen, then I have to bear that. And it's a very simple thing, but it's frightening. And so what we did, we made a tremendous mistake in '64 when we finally won that 400-year-old argument for our freedom. We won it. We made a big mistake at that point. We turned around and we said, we just presented to white America our suffering and what they'd done to us. And they paid us off. They gave us a great society, a war on poverty, school busing, affirmative action, liberal welfare policies, on and on and on. They gave us so much reparation, we didn't know what to do. They did not give us self-possession. And so the whole great society, and you hear numbers, trillions of dollars certainly, failed. It just failed. Maybe a few people who didn't really need it in the first place hustled it and made some money. But for the most part, it failed. It did not transform this people trying to recover from centuries of humiliating, spiritually defeating racism and segregation. It was a policy of denigration. It wasn't just we're going to use your labor. It was we're going to denigrate you as human beings so that you agree with the people who are denigrating you. That's the ugly thing about our victimization, the history of it. It's conditioned us carefully not to see possibility and opportunity in ourselves. We always think of it, I've got to get a protest together. I've got to line up my buddies and we make a national campaign and call people who don't want to protest Uncle Tom's, and we're going to squeeze out of this protest out of ourselves. Well, how's that worked out for us? We are lower by most metrics. We're farther behind white Americans than we were when they passed that '64 Civil Rights Bill.
That's white supremacy, right?
Yes, it is. That's what. Do you think that's what people are not saying? What do you people want? Well, you want us to give you what nobody can give you, a life. You have to get that yourself. And the other side of that is, this is the richest human civilization in all of history. Opportunity is rolling down the street. It's everywhere. You just can barely avoid it. You have to run from it. There's so much opportunity. And I believe on years and years on college campuses, and I was a part of it when I was there, organizing all the black students, and we're going to take over this, and we're going to do this, and so forth. Well, how about taking over ourselves?
Wow.
How about protesting ourselves when we know good and well that we're going down the wrong road? And we know that. But we know we'll be forgiven in part because we're black. And you can't expect anything from blacks. You can't. They won't. Ouch. They're not going to do all it's money down the drain. Well, we are headed for a self-confrontation, I believe. And because nothing else has worked, we've tried everything. Our young people today are figures of pathos. They mimic the protests of the 60s. Mimic the idea that racism around every corner, systemic racism, so forth. God knows, some of the black people I grew up with, if that kind of racism was waiting for around the corner, then they would be happy to have it. That's freedom. That's freedom. Freedom doesn't blow kisses to you. It just is freedom. It's all up to you. The gift of life. And it seems to me this is our challenge to get in touch with this. There are other ethnic groups. I won't name them because I don't want to play the woke and all that kind of game. But there are other groups who we can learn something from. We can model. The schools are terrible. Well, you can resist to a point, but set up your own schools. Set up your own schools. Do it yourself. It'll be done, if not perfectly, it'll be done better than any other way. There are, again, opportunity. Nobody's going to stop us. This is the freest country in the world. We should be happy. We don't have to fight for freedom anymore. That battle we won. We won it. And history will see the greatness it took to win that. We'll be credited for that. Now history's waiting to see, what do you do with what you got?
Amen. Amen. Did you want to? You look like you were chomping at the bit, ready to get in.
No. I drank from the fountain of Shelby. You know, I asked this the other day. How many of you all know Jesse Owens? Or know of him? Okay, know of him. I had a great uncle. His name was D. Hart Hubbard. And you can look this up a little bit. He was the first black American to win an Olympic gold medal in track and field. He did it in 1924, and that year he was to run against the great Eric Liddell to determine who was the fastest human being on the face of the earth. And when he got to Paris, the International Olympic Committee told him that the 100 was a white-only event, so he couldn't participate. So he set the world record in the long jump, got his gold medal. But when he came back home, he told my mom's generation that God had blessed him. Because, as you know, Eric Liddell didn't run in the finals because it fell on the Sabbath, and he didn't run track on the Sabbath. So he gave up the gold medal because of a fidelity to his faith. And if there's anything that I take away from the gathering and the discussions that we've had here, it is so important that we nurture the fidelity to our faith. And that we, in fact, work hard, because one of the lessons that became very important in the family, in my family and the family that I married into 55 years ago, my girlfriend of 60 years is sitting right here. But was pretty simple, and that was that it is our faith and our moral coherence to get our behavior to match those things that we profess to believe. And that's part of leadership. That's part of modeling. That's part of motherhood and fatherhood for children, is to let them see that moral coherence, that mom and dad and Mayor Smith, they in fact not only talk a good talk, they walk the talk. And it's through that sort of moral coherence and that sort of fidelity to the biblical truths that we were raised on that gives real substance to our human agency to affect change.
Let me just add a footnote to that too, but I think the challenge is we've got the right message, not always the right messengers. Mm-hmm. And I believe that when Jesus wanted to, he didn't seek to convert people as much as he wanted to create disciples. And that's very different, creating a disciple. And to me, whenever I try to convince people the value of of faith, I bring the fruit of that faith. I bring 4 grassroots leaders, ex-offenders, whose lives have been transformed by the grace of God. and let them speak for it. When the servants of John the Baptist came to Jesus, are you the one, do we seek another? Jesus didn't say anything. He just healed in their presence and said, go tell them what you saw. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what we've got to do. Whenever I go anywhere to talk about these values, Latasha knows that because she's one of them. They want to know, can somebody born in the inner city, challenged with kids and all, can they make it? Ask Latasha. Ask Curtis Watkins. And so it seems to me that a part of that, we must let truth speak for itself. That you convert people by convincing them that embracing these values of our nation creates a better person. It creates an improved nation. And so that seems to me the challenge that we face. Not presenting a superior argument, that a witness is more powerful than an advocate. And experience will always trump an argument. And so that's what we must do. I think present evidence that these values make a difference.
Did you want to say something? Mm-hmm. He gave me that look, so
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me say something real quick, and then I think one of the problems, Bob said this, that us looking and seeing where we're at and what our situation is, there's one specific problem in America today, and that keeps us from seeing where we're at, and that is what I call symbiotic relationship between white America and black America. What is a symbiotic relationship? A symbiotic relationship is when I look at you and I see your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses as my strength. And you look back at me and you see my weaknesses as your strength. White people say, are in a sense almost happy to see black suffering. Look at the not because they want to end black suffering, but because they want to be free of it. They want to take it over. And this I forgot.
You meant white liberals, right?
White liberals. White liberals. We become an opportunity for them to overcome their own white guilt. We are their opportunity. We then, over here, are afraid and nervous about freedom. And so we say, our problem is not freedom. Our problem is racism, and we are victimized by a systemically racist society, and we'll get ahead if we can overcome all that.
So that becomes our excuse?
That becomes our excuse. And so in both instances, you miss reality. The reality is black fourth graders can't read. I don't know whether it's got black history or white history. They can't read it. Four centuries of oppression will do that to a people. We don't need to be ashamed of that. We've done amazingly well given what we went through. But it seems to me, again, at this point, this bond we have with somehow making white people be responsible for our problems, thinking that white America is our only chance. And if they could just only see what it would take for us to get over this and get over that, we'd be okay. And so since they're not going to do that, or when they do it, they will do it, they'll create programs, they'll spend trillions of dollars giving us reparations, and it's all wasted. Because and here's the greatest line in any, I think, by any figure in history, asking Frederick Douglass what to do now with the slaves when we're free. Leave us alone.
Amen.
Until that, we won't really be free. We won't really be free. Somebody else sell us a bill of goods.
Eric, let me come around full circle because, I tell that story about my Uncle D-Hart, but, he had graduated from University of Michigan because what I want you to know is that the reason I relate so well with Bob is because early part of my childhood, I grew up in public housing. My Uncle D-Hart came back. He had graduated from University of Michigan. He, in fact, the only job he could get was as a playground director. He organized Nato baseball in the black community. He became one of the founders of the American Negro Baseball League. And what's important there is that he had not only an academic appreciation, he actually talked about entrepreneurship. And the reason I say that is because, not my my public service as an official, but it's a risk orientation. Shelby talks about, the psychology of being enslaved. Sometimes we're so interested in achieving an equilibrium that we are afraid to take the risk of freedom or confronting a stale status quo. And I would just remember this. I had a buddy who came to me and said, Ken, let's invest in a radio station. And I didn't have a nickel to invest, but I had to go home and convince Rosa that we were going to, we were going to second mortgage our house to, in fact, invest in this radio station. Well, we started a company, Blue Chip Broadcasting. We bought that radio station. We grew it to 11. When we wanted to take it from 11 to 22, we, in fact, went to Michael Jordan and Prince and some others with some capital, and we did it, and we blew it, and it became the second leading minority-owned broadcast company. But what is important about the story wasn't the fact that we became the second largest broadcast company, but through our risk orientation, we created over 378 jobs. And we, in fact, those people were able to send their kids to school or, in fact, buy their own property. And so it's a cycle. It's a risk orientation that so many people get wrung out of them. They don't want to take a risk. It is easier to be a ward of the state or dependent on the welfare state than it is to have a risk orientation and to be, as Shelby says and Bob has demonstrated, an agent in your own upliftment.
Freedom is hard work.
That's right.
Living free is hard.
Now you see why I admire these men. They are giants in the, they come before me. I'm the upstart here, even at 64. These guys are the real warriors. We stand on their shoulders. The only other person I would have up here would be a Thomas Sowell. Yeah. They have paved the way, and of course, you go back even further, and as you mentioned, Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington. These are heroes. These are people we should be talking about. We should be reading. You should be reading Shebly Steele's books. You should be reading Bob Woodson's book. I think Ken Blackwell's written a couple of books as well. These guys are writers and speakers and thinkers and doers, and I wanted to honor them because they have touched my life. I've had a chance, and they're really gracious too. Sometimes you think, it's hard to, when you look at people and you feel like they're way up here, right, above you, right? And you think that approaching them, they might, be a little standoffish and stuff. I'm this little upstart guy who started a TV program called Kingdoms in Conflict, right? I go to them and ask them if I can interview them, and I've interviewed all three. They were nice enough. You can clap on that one. That was because it's about. They allowed me to interview them. I interviewed actually Dr. Steele twice because we had some extra time. Because as you see here, once you get them going, they're so full of knowledge. We could spend another hour here just talking about what they know, and they do it without notes. Just do it. Yeah, right. I'd love to, but we can't stay here all night because they're going to start charging me more money. So unless you're willing to, take up a collection, and we can do this. Well, Freedom's Journal Institute is a nonprofit organization. You can go to the website, or you can download the app, Freedom's Journal Institute. We have an Apple app, and we have what's the other one? Android. And you can download that, and you can, most of the videos we've ever done that you've seen are actually on the app. But I want to transition. Oh, there was one thing that I did want to say that I think you guys have all talked about at some point. This whole idea that somehow we need, with segregation, with the forced integration, that somehow we needed, that our kids could only learn if they were sitting next to white kids. Right. And that was a wrong idea. That somehow, I don't know where that idea came from, but that hurt black children because our schools were doing quite well before there was integration. Right. And busing somebody from one neighborhood to another so they could sit, with another white student or something, did not do anything for the white student or the black student, for that matter. But I'm not going to let you comment on that because we'll be here for another. So let's give them a round of applause. I'm going to ask my wife to come up. And we're going to hand out these awards. Yes, continue to clap. This is historic. Take your pictures. Get this, post it. Yeah, the names are on the bottom. Let's go with R. So it's down. We're going to go in order of the RISE principles. You have to open it. It's in a Tiffany box. So it must be something special. I guess we should have had some music for this, right? Do you want me to sing a solo? So low you can't hear it, right? Do any of you gentlemen sing? I mean,
You don't want that.
do you want to read it?
You can read it, because
Okay. Freedom's Journal Institute presents the 2022 RISE Award for Responsible Government to the Honorable J. Kenneth Blackwell for his tireless work as a public servant and organizational leader and commitment on behalf of policies and governance that promote the rights of all people. They're all taking photos. Okay. Here's the box that goes.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Now, we had this well planned in our head, at least. Yeah, they're wrapped very well, by the way. And we're going to get a picture of all of them. Don't wrap it back up. Oh, well, maybe.
Grab it.
And she's doing it so careful. That's backwards. Freedom's Journal Institute presents the 2022 RISE Award for Individual Liberty and Fidelity to Dr. Shebly Steele for his unrelenting work and judicious defense of personal agency against black victimhood and white guilt.
Thank you very, very much.
I'm realizing my wife isn't in these pictures either. So, because she's a co-founder. Okay.
I got her.
You got her? Freedom's Journal Institute presents the 2022 R.I.S.E Award for Economic Empowerment. How do you know it was for you? To Mr. Robert Woodson for his lifelong work to serve and protect the well-being of others by promoting economic uplift through the revitalization of urban neighborhoods. Okay, now you- Now let's try and get it in order. R. R.I. So just go down this, right this way. You come this way. No, over here, over here. Yeah, because you're R. Okay. So it's, we're just missing S. So it's R, I, K would be here, S, and E. Rise.
All right, let's get everybody in.
You want us in here too?
Yes.
So she should probably stand in the middle. We're going to ask them to come on down back to the table, and I am going to wrap this up.